Good evening, dear friends. Welcome back to You Are Invincible. I hope you all are doing great and you have had a fantastic week. Well, we are back again with yet another interview. And this time, our esteemed guest is one who's going to unravel few secrets in a very simple manner. How you can elevate your higher consciousness to your own life and how you can live a life to their full extent and fulfill your dreams and ambitions. Without further ado, I would like to share a few kind words for him before we call him online. Since 2016, Billy Atwell and his guests have helped 24,000 plus subscribers to get to the root of self doubt, overcome their painful past, and teach them how to transform into confident individuals through weekly conversations of sharing personal experiences and insights on this top ranking Apple podcast. Billy is one of the best kept secrets on the internet. He runs a powerful podcast called Fear Not, Living Beyond Your Fears, on which he interviews top experts in all areas of fear, from neurologists and psychologists, who discuss the science behind fear and confidence, to top athletes and actors who confront fear and self doubt on a daily basis, to best selling self help authors who have developed and shared powerful approaches to the challenges of life. And Billy has also written his first book known as Unshakable Self Confidence, whose cover page I'm going to share with all of you right now. So, this is the beautiful cover page, which is having a phoenix right in front. It says Unshakable Self Confidence, a clear path to confidence. Discover the root of your self doubt and transform into a truly confident person. So, without further ado, I'm going to invite Billy live with us today. Hello, Billy.
Hey there. I think there's a little bit of a
How
time
are you
delay.
doing?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Yes, there is viewers. Please heads up. There might be certain internet issues, but please bear with us. This is going to be a fantastic interview. So welcome on board on You Are Invincible, Billy. We are delighted to have you with us.
Yeah, it's definitely my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
And I must say, the phoenix on your book cover and also the T-shirt that you're wearing is a symbol of hope and resurrection, which is really enlightening.
Yeah, it was on my journey when I rebranded the show from Fear Not to Unshakable Self Confidence. And I think, too, also because I grew up in Arizona and there's a city called Phoenix, and there's a lot of Phoenix symbology there. But on my journey, I discovered what a phoenix really was sort of this process of birth and regrowth, and that nothing's stagnant or final. And it just resonated really deeply. Yeah.
And I love the color which you have chosen, the purple color, which is again a very royal color.
Again, a little bit intentional on that. Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, if you're ready, can we start with our fun question and answers?
I am.
Perfect. So, the first question for you is, describe your journey when you first started this podcast. From then till now, how has the journey been? And were there any difficulties you faced?
Yeah. The journey itself started almost 9 years ago. And I know you've read the book about the sort of the catalyst moment. I had been in abusive relationships with narcissistic and alcoholics, and they were pretty violent. So at the end of the second relationship that I had, I was almost strangled to death. And through the trauma, I was having these questions like, how did I get here again? How did I find myself in a very similar situation? And so that started a journey, an exploration, if you will, into answering that question. What was going on? And unfortunately, because the common denominator was me. uh, and that led to doing a lot of research. I started off with a book by Joyce Myers called Battlefield of the Mind. And that sort of introduced me into the concept about our thoughts creating and shaping our reality. And that was a really difficult read for me, but I persisted. And then I started to explore this even further because I'm sort of a natural researcher to begin with. So I started reading all kinds of spiritual practices because I had some resistance to Christianity. And so I started reading Buddhist texts. I started reading Hindu texts, specifically the Upanishad. And I started to see this pattern, this underlying pattern of the cohesiveness that all these spiritual practices had, which was you really are your thoughts, and that those thoughts really come from the divine source. So about 4 years in, then I started to create the show because I was studying fear, I was studying mindset, I was talking to those neuroscientists, like you mentioned in the beginning, when the show was called Fear Not. And it was initially for my own personal research and my own journey and my own recovery. But as we've transformed now the show into Unshakable Self-Confidence, it really is sort of providing the path to create a wake, to sort of lead a breadcrumb trail for everyone else who's been in abusive relationships or these toxic relationships or suffered from violence, to understand why you keep finding yourself in them, and how you don't have to keep repeating that pattern. Where the show's in its 5th season now, and so collectively these last 9 years, I mean, there's been lots of challenges. I don't think we have enough time to go over them, but I think the biggest challenge was the old mindset, which was fear-based and self-limited and unworthiness, and that was the biggest challenge, was to stand up to that and to face it and to basically put it in its place, realizing that there was this divine sovereign nature within me that was above all things, and that included fear, and that included self-doubt, and included this negative self-image, which I call the inherited negative self-image, but it's not really that. It's sort of the concept of the eternal dreamer dreaming non-eternal dreams, or God descending into man and forgetting itself and knowing itself. I mean, all these sort of spiritual maxims that are the rediscovery of the divine within, and that's because you have to cast off the stone, the concrete, sort of like the mythology about the Tibetan Buddhist temple, being raided and they covered it in concrete, the gold statue, and the metaphor there is to like chip off the concrete to reveal the gold within, the divine nature within. So that's been the biggest challenge, especially when the world doesn't quite see it that way, because they're still sort of trapped in the illusion of the dreams of good and evil, as William Blake would put it.
That's wonderful, Billy. I would like to share when you shared about the Upanishad and you shared about the Buddhist scriptures. One of the ancient Japanese monks, a Buddhist monk named Nichiren Daishonin, he was practicing the Mahayana Buddhism, the Lotus Sutra, which Gautama Buddha had written in the last 8 years of his life. So Nichiren Daishonin very beautifully shared converting poison into medicine. So whatever hardships that you have faced in your own personal life, how beautifully by elevating your own self to the higher consciousness, to the true self, as you share, you are able to share it with others and change that poison of your life into medicine for millions out there. So what you're doing is commendable, and thank you so much for overcoming all self-doubt and of your own life, and being able to give so much more to the world out there. They are all waiting to experience this, and you're on the right path. I mean, that's just beautiful. I just thought I should share this because you're doing exactly, which you spoke about, getting onto your true self and how to overcome it. So it's commendable.
Thank you.
We move on to the next question, which is, what inspired you to keep the name Unshakable Self-Confidence?
When I was changing the show from Fear Not to Unshakable Self-Confidence, because I had sort of outgrown the skin of Fear Not, I was stronger and wiser, if you will, to put it in very non-proper words, but for lack of better words at the moment. What I've discovered is when you reconnect with Source, there's a relationship there. Like Jesus talks about this oneness and God living through you. Like Joseph Campbell would say, you're the mask. Like Billy is the mask of God, having an experience of Billy. You realize what most people call intuition or Holy Spirit or your GPS system is there to help you and guide you on your particular path and purpose. And so at that point, changing the name to Unshakable Self-Confidence, kind of like changing the logo to the Phoenix, was completely divine inspired. It was just sort of, it came to me intuitively in a flash, and I just trusted that and followed through on it. I mean, it's really that simple.
Yeah, even I've heard about the words rising like a phoenix.
Yeah, yeah,
That's exactly I feel what you have done.
yeah. The Phoenix was intentional because of, I think, even in the terms of with the abuse, that you could move beyond that. You could burn all that away. You could burn your past away and all the pain and let it go in order to be reborn, to go to the next level, to reclaim that divine, identity, origin.
Yes, you very beautifully explained it in your book also about the phoenix, how from the ashes, it's like a new life being reborn. And viewers, let me tell you that you have to get your hands on his book, Unshakable Self-Confidence. It's going to blow your mind. It is just beautiful the way he has shared it in such a simple manner with so many illustrations and how to go about the techniques. So, viewers, please get your hands on this book. So, Billy, we'll move on to the next question. What is the connection between mental health and get in touch with your higher self?
That's a big question. Mental health is important in terms of connecting with your higher self because it's identity, and identity comes through a thought. And if your thoughts
Mm,
are on this negative, fearful, unworthy, undeserving image that the world will teach you that you are, to move you away from that, inner golden Buddha nature, if you will, to go back to that symbolism, you you have to learn that you have power over your thoughts, not so much in that you can um, stop thought, because like Buddha said, there's a stream of consciousness and your job is to sort of pick out the positive thoughts. You see this in um, the Judeo-Christian spiritual practice as well. It's where are your thoughts? It's quantum observation, and if you keep focusing on the negative, that's what you're going to have. And so you've got to like drop it, let it go back into the stream of consciousness, and just let it go through, um, and start paying attention. I think this is what meditation sort of comes through, sort of that observer, is just to see it all outside of you, that you are not your thoughts. They feel like they're inside of you because mostly fear is like right up here. It's so close and it's whispering in your ear. And there's the illusion that you are tricked into self-identity, identifying with. And so mental health and that higher self are interconnected, um, very much so. And maybe I'm not explaining it the way someone who specializes in mental health would explain it, but that's what I've learned on this 8 journey. Like I said before, that the initial journey was understanding the concept that your thoughts create your reality. But what I've discovered since then is that you are not your thoughts. You are the
mm,
divine, having the experience in which you can pick and choose. I mean, even in the Judeo system, there's God said, "I set before you life and death. Now choose life." There's this
mm,
concept that goes back to the Buddha concept. It's like it's all there. All there is God. Everything is God. Even the bad stuff, or I should say, bad stuff, not just the good stuff, because nothing exists without this source. And sort of this
mm,
game, this journey of life that we go through, the hero's journey, if you will, it's to sort of pick out the tools, and that's the only power that you have in this world. You can't control things outside of you, but if you can understand the thought process and how your mind works, and that you are in control of your mind, not your mind in control of you, you can start to select, you can
mm,
start to filter, or you can start to pull out of that stream of consciousness the thoughts that will create your reality. So I would say, like, again, just to reiterate, and maybe I'm not talking about it in a scientific term, but they're interlinked. You can't know your higher self without understanding how your mental thought process works, and
mm.
your ability to I was going to say manage it, but to ownership over it.
Right. So we can also say, in a way, that the way we speak to our own self, when we're not like we give talk to others, but when that moment comes when each one of us are sitting by our own self, or even if you're in a crowd, we speak to our own self. What we speak to our own self when you speak about taking ownership, I guess that aspect would be very, very crucial in order to have a better mental health, and from there taking it towards higher consciousness. Would that be so?
Yeah. Even in terms of this inherited negative self-image route and the patterns of abuse that get passed down through family. I mean, I've seen actual experiences in my research that if you focus on that and you allow that to remain in your mind, it's just going to take you down further and down into sort of the pit. Um, that could lead to drug addiction. It could lead to homelessness. I mean, it's like
Mm,
your mind will create your reality. So yeah, it's it's everything. Definitely.
right, right. So we have to be so careful of what we are speaking to our own self.
Hmm.
So crucial and so important. That brings us to the next question. When we talk about mental health, is it related to the emotional aspect, or the physical aspect, or is it a general aspect of the human brain? What it be?
Uh, it's all of it. What I've realized in my research is that thoughts are both spiritual, they're energy, but they manifest in your mind, in your brain, as neurological patterns. So it's a duality, and that's where you want to jump out ahead of it in your thoughts and control those thoughts before they actually sort of take physical manifestation in your brain that you keep repeating, and that's going to become your belief system, and whatever's in your brain as a belief system is going to drive you physically and to make
Mm,
actions or choices that will manifest into your life. So that's what I've discovered. It's both, but it's sort of like it starts out here, like Buddha said, in the stream of consciousness, and what you pick out, you're sort of agreeing to, and as you sort of use those thoughts like a mantra, because if you're like, I'm unworthy, I'm incapable, whatever, that's a mantra, that's a prayer.
mm,
Um, I'm not good enough, all this stuff, that's a mantra, that's a prayer, and the more you do that, it starts to go from the vibrational quantum field into matter. It starts to reduce in frequency, if you will, if we want to go there scientifically, and it's got to take
right.
shape and form, and that this is what it is, and it goes into your brain, and then it gets hardwired. Not that it's permanent, because uh, interviewing lots and lots of neuroscientists, the brain is totally malleable, and you can totally reshape it and shift it, but that
Mm,
requires an adjustment period. So mental health is spiritual, it's also physical. Emotions are like thoughts, they're just vibrations, and again, it goes back to, you can just see them pass by without engaging or identifying with them. So that takes a while to understand. It takes some
mm,
practice.
mm,
I definitely struggled with that
right.
because, again, that tendency and training that we get from family and friends, that we are our emotions, we are our thoughts, when that's not the case. You don't. There are all these external exponents that we have to sort of pick and choose and to build our thoughts and reality. Um, But because, again, we have these negative self images, we think that we are servants to our thoughts, slaves to our thoughts and
Mm.
emotions, when really we're the master. And so it's just a reversal, if that makes sense. Um,
Yes, yes, it does make sense.
yeah. So that's what I
So,
was. Oh no, go ahead.
no, please go ahead.
I was going to say that's what we sort of talk about on the show, and what we talk about at Unshakable Self Confidence is just the reversal of the relationship between all thought and all emotion. This, like in the book, it's like
Mm.
you're either the master or you're the slave. You're either sitting in your sovereignty, your divine sovereignty, or you're a slave. And it's not that you're superior to anyone else in the worldly version of master and slave, but rather the relationship between your thoughts and emotion, and in the context of how they create your identity, or rather free you from your false identity as being separate from God, being separate from Buddha, from Christ's nature, from the quantum field, whatever you want to call it.
Right, right. It's, from the looks of it, uh, it sounds so complicated for a layman, but if you go to the very basic of it, the only thing that each one of us needs to control is our thoughts. And with our thoughts, our energy would be taken care of. With energy, that would be affecting our emotions. So hence the emotions would again affect the mental equilibrium that we have, which would
Yeah.
affect the entire, whatever is going on in our brain. So the only thing that we need to be very, very aware and alert is our thoughts.
Yeah. The secret to life is so simple because it's there, recorded throughout human history, through all culture, throughout all spiritual
Right.
practices, that it's your thoughts. But we're trained in this world for whatever purposes and reasons, mostly population control, by higher ups, is to
Mm,
turn your gaze away from that truth, and they're feeding you a new reality. And so when you come up to it and you come up to the simplicity of it, it's hard to you to accept, and you reject and you resist. And that's just sort of a process to go through, but you can do it. I mean, I'm not
mm,
special. You're not special. The people that came before us are not special. They just sort of stuck with it, and went through the
right.
process of change.
Yeah, it's so right. I mean, so truly, it is not difficult. It's about as simple as taking a shower every day or brushing your teeth every day. So it's
Yeah,
it's a practice. Being consistent, and how you very beautifully have shared the 30 days and the 90 days, it takes to actually rebuild the entire system inside the brain, to reaffirm what you have been living and how to live a better life. So, yeah, everybody needs to be disciplined. And firstly, they need to be open to the fact that they want to change their life. If they are not willing to do so, I don't think anybody can help anyone.
yeah, and you have to sort of have the call, if you will. You have to have the sort of that moment in time where you're ready, and then after that, it's just
Mm,
it's a persistent and patience game, allowing the energy force to. There's seasons, there's seasons of growth and seasons of regeneration, and
mm,
that would be my advice at the moment. It's like, if you're not getting the results you want, it's probably because you're being impatient. And I definitely was there. So
mm,
it's just finding the information and then just letting the higher power transform you, and just
mm.
quit resisting, essentially, which is hard,
Yeah,
when
I
you're dealing
agree.
with
And
ego.
yeah, we become so impatient. Okay, why we are doing everything possible, and then you're not seeing results? What is happening? I mean, I guess that's the point where we really need to trust and have faith, which is so crucial, and just go with the entire process and continue to be on
Yeah.
that path.
Yep.
Wonderful, wonderful. That brings us to the next question. Nowadays, there is a research being conducted on psychedelic drugs. What are your views on that?
Yeah. When you told me you were going to ask that question, I've been thinking it for a while. Um, I have 2 points of view on it. Obviously, there is a
Hmm.
long history, through all culture, um, of psychedelic drugs being used, specifically like with shamans, right? There's someone in the tribe
Mm-hmm.
that was designated for that role to use psychedelic drugs to remove the ego, to open themselves up to the greater power source. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand that intellectually. I think though that in contemporary times, um, and I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, because I've had my own
Mm-hmm.
experiences, so I'd be a hypocrite. um,
Right.
but I think the danger of that is that we live in such a time, especially now, where there's so much fear and so much wanting to not be in fear that people rely on these things to feel better. And then
Mm-hmm.
when that high comes down, if you don't move forward, like a shaman would, or if you have sort of that religious experience through the use of a ceremony and the drug, if you don't move forward on the journey and because you're stuck in fear, you want to feel like you did when you were under that influence, under that thing. And so that this is what, like, sort of addiction. Um, and I'm seeing this a
Mm-hmm.
lot here in America more and more, especially now that marijuana is legal and it's being used for depression. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, because it feels so damn good. But it's not it's not sustainable. And I think there's sort of an imbalance between using these things for and I use this word, enlightenment, sort of
Mm-hmm.
elevated consciousness. But
Mm-hmm.
unless you can move forward, once you return to the physical realm, if you will, and move forward in action, there's going to be a problem. And so this is sort of my split thinking about it, is that I don't deny that it has the power to elevate you and to take you into a consciousness, to have an experience, to receive a message. But if you can't come back into reality and move forward with the experience propelling you, and you want to keep having that experience, and so you keep getting high, that's a problem. So,
Mm. Yeah, and that's going to have an irreversible damage to your system internally when it comes to starting to your brain and your different organs.
yeah,
Drugs
yeah,
can be quite harmful.
yeah. Um, and personally, for me, when I sort of had that experience, it messed with my meditation practice. And there's ways, I
Mm.
think there's other ways of connecting to source through meditation or um, conscious, deliberate um, directing your thought to it, that you get those same feelings, those same intuitive impulses. So, it's not for me to say on anyone's personal journey, and that is not what I'm saying. I'm just sort of seeing from a researcher scientific, standing back, taking the 50,000-foot view, that I see more
Mm.
people using this to create elevations of comfort and calmness for all the wrong reasons. And they just constantly dope themselves
Mm.
up. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I've been thinking about for the last couple days when you gave me that question to think about. So yeah,
Right, right. No, it makes a lot of sense because when we get onto meditation and try to rely on our own self, that is much more powerful rather than relying on a substance, which would be an alien towards our body. But if you are on the meditation path, it's actually relying on our own inner self to be able to connect each and every the mind, body, soul to the highest source,
yeah,
which has longevity, as well as it's going to propel us in the right path of any aspect of our life. So it makes a lot of sense rather than
yeah,
depending upon something which would be so harmful in the long run. And I am sure that people now have started to understand more, especially during the last couple of months that we have been facing this pandemic. A lot of people must have realized that mental health and meditation, all this is so much more important rather than just running after a few things materialistically or relationship wise or family. Everything is important, but the base comes down to this, few things.
yeah.
Wonderful. So would like to ask you the next question, which is a pretty long one, but I'm sure you'll answer it very well. During these COVID times, when people are talking about the second wave of lockdown, and in some countries it has already been implemented, what do you think will be the collective mental health of the population?
Um, I don't mean to sound pessimistic, because I'm not. But in terms of the reality that we're experiencing, there are certain psychological states that are always there. They're
Mm,
always present. Um, there's a passage in the New Testament where Jesus is talking to his apostles when Mary Magdalene sort of breaks the oil on top of his head right before he's about to be crucified, and the apostles were
mhm,
screaming, "That's such a waste of money because that money could go to the poor." And Jesus was like, "There's always going to be poor people." Um, and that took me a
mm,
long time to understand what he was saying. It's not that people have to be poor, but there's a mindset that causes poverty. Um, when you observe your reality and you can't get beyond the reality, if you can't break beyond it and lift up, that sort of does that. And I know that probably is going to rustle some, ruffle some feathers from people that may be listening to this. But when I was studying Neville Goddard, he was like, these stories of mythology, whether you look in the Hindu text or the Judeo Christian text or the
mhm,
Buddhist text, there's these characters which are not real. They're psychological states that deal with
mhm,
greed and deal with poverty and deal with illness. And so people fall into states of consciousness. And whether or not we can do that or not, that's beyond our control. Like, Gandhi said, be the change. And that took me a long time because I wanted to change the world to get everyone to sort of make me feel better where I was. And what I've learned from Gandhi was like, all you can do is change yourself. Like even Rumi said it, right? It's like I thought myself clever
mm,
because I wanted to change the world, but now I'm wiser because I realized, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but it changed myself.
mm,
And that's all you can do. So, not to avoid the question or anything like that, but that's beyond my control and that's beyond my speculation. And the only thing that I can do in this time is to be the change. Um, and then if you do that, like Jesus
mm,
was talking about, to take your light from under the bushel, you become the lighthouse to guide in the darkness out there in the sea. Whether or not
mhm,
the ships follow that light or not is really not your responsibility. It should not be your concern. So, do I think a lot's going to change? Probably not, because of just human nature. And I used to be there, and I used to be in a victim mentality. So it's not a judgment thing. It's just realistic that unless the individual responds and has had enough and takes the action, nothing will change. And to go back, it's like you can't make people change because I think we learned through history that if you tell people what to do, they naturally want to fight. Um, to I'm sorry, I really love Gandhi, but the concept of nonviolent resistance, like if you are in the same frequency as the other person that you're trying to change,
mm,
you're combating, and so there's resistance. So you get this, where if you just stand in like what Gandhi would say, the light or love, then there's no resistance because you're not engaging, and that's all you can do. So if someone wants to participate and elevating global consciousness is quit worrying about what other people are doing and what are you doing? What
mm.
are you thinking? Where are you at this moment of consciousness? And that's all you can do.
That's so beautifully shared, Billy. I mean, at the end of it, it is so important to be on the right path. If everybody understands right path doesn't mean what is right and wrong, but the path of self-improvement, the path of elevating our own consciousness, and very beautifully shared. Because at the end of it, if we are able to change our own self, I believe we are looking at the mirrors all around us. So if we change, everything outside externally also starts to change, which is the beauty of living. And if we have that anger, that greed inside our own self, and then we are trying to, change the world, we're going to see the same thing outside, and then we'll keep cribbing what's happening. I'm trying to do my best, but we are forgetting to look within, that we need to change certain aspects of our own life.
Yeah, it's like the phrase "the blind leading the blind,"
So true.
and yeah, yeah. And if it is going to work, it's not going to work. Uh, yeah. So
Wonderful. And I'm actually really enjoying speaking with you, Billy, because it's like so many things are there in this universe, and I'm so fortunate that we belong to the same tribe where we're doing our best to be in the high frequency and to be able to impart this knowledge that we have gathered in maybe a smallest, minutest of aspect. I'm sure it's a universe, it's a cosmos, and we are just minute dust particles. But to be able to impart this small knowledge from our side to the viewers, to the world out there, if we can make that small change in their mindset that they are themselves the masters of their own life, and hence they can achieve everything that they want in the rightful manner, in the righteous manner, I feel our being on this planet during the short duration of time of our life would be so fruitful. So I
yeah.
really feel fortunate.
Uh, Yeah, I agree. This is one of the reasons why I've really enjoyed podcasting and talking to other people is because just sort of the connecting and I think by doing this, we're doing what we can in order to sort of be the light, if you will. Um, so again, I'm going to thank you for allowing me to be on your show and to have this conversation because I'm thoroughly enjoying it. But also too because we're doing something more constructive than telling people that they're wrong or we're fighting and that's the whole point, right? It's like Gandhi said, be the change.
Yes,
Yeah,
so true. I mean, when you say about the beacon, we are trying to be that beacon of hope in this ocean that everybody is swimming in. So we're just trying to tell them, okay, this is how it is, and you can look at us. You can. We are also learning while we share about all this. So we are also moving on the same path. So it's like a beacon of hope for people all over the globe, and I feel so fortunate and so grateful that that we can be that small change in order to make them walk that path. So thank you so much for being on our side. So it's a mutual respect for each other.
thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful. So I'd like to go on to the next question, Billy.
Mhm.
Yeah. So do you think technology is playing a crucial role in the mental health of the population globally?
That is a yes and a no too. It kind of goes back to that psychedelic drug question. Um, Nothing in
Hmm.
this world is good or bad except how we perceive it, right? So we could say technology is good because it's um, removing barriers to resources that could enable like we're using technology right now to help people that may be wanting to understand or we're providing information but on the flip side technology can be detrimental too because there's so much information that you um, the best way to explain this is with a story. So, being a researcher, I studied, I've read all the books. I mean, you can see
Hmm.
these are just the books that I kept that are meaningful for
Yes.
me, from like Marcus Aurelius and Gandhi,
Wow.
and all kinds of different
Right.
spiritual texts. But I had a guest on the show multiple times. His name was Eli Jackson Bear, and this man is amazing. He's like so high up on the cloud, if you will. Um, and he's just so every time I talk to him, it's amazing. But he called me out once because he's like, "You got to quit being the caterpillar. You got to quit eating the leaves of knowledge, and actually go through the transformation process."
Hmm.
And so this is, I think, the downside of technology, which again, I've been there, where you consume, but you never actually take any steps putting that knowledge into practice to move yourself forward and get that
Hmm.
transformation. So technology is great and technology can be bad. It depends again on how you're using it and where you are in your life. And are you conscious of are you the master of technology or you its slave?
Makes sense. Makes sense. As one of the famous people, I'm forgetting the name, he said anything in excess is poison. And especially how we use it, which you rightly said, it is so important whether we can use it for destruction, whether we can use it for animosity, or we can use the same technology, like you rightly said, we're using technology right now between the two of us to be able to enlighten people, to be able to guide them. So they're two ways of the same coin. And which is the higher self that chooses the side, I feel that is the side that everybody should be on.
Yeah. Again, it just boils to your relationship with it, and your perception of it. And, again, it goes back to that I set before you life and death, now choose. It just in itself, because if everything's divine, because nothing exists without the divine source, everything is energy, then it's all things and it has the possibility for all things. So, you know, if nothing else today for everyone that's listening, nothing in this world is good or bad. It's
Mm,
just your interaction uh, and relationship with it, and that stems from here. And the question is, why am I using it? Am I being used by it, or am I using it? And that should be your biggest
mm,
question, whether it comes to, to bring back the psychedelic drugs or the technology. It's take some time to observe your relationship and see what's going on, with it, your interaction with it, and then you'll know.
right, right. Very true, very true. Well, viewers, we are having a fantastic conversation with Billy Otwell. He has written this fantastic book, his first book, which is beautiful. It is called Unshakable Self-Confidence, and we are having this wonderful interview with him, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I hope you all are having the same feelings. So, Billy will go on to the next question. So, on your podcast, this is interesting. I'm sure you'll have many of these moments. On your podcast, which has been the most memorable interview you have conducted so far, and why is it memorable?
Um, I don't know if there's technically one.
You
uh,
can share about them, all of them.
yeah, yeah. I just, I mean, I've done over 400 interviews, and they've all
Wow.
changed my life. They've all contributed. There's been
Mm,
guests who've been on the show multiple times. There's a woman by the name of Mary Jo Paleo. She's been on the show 5 times, right from the beginning, even when the show was called Fear Not.
wow.
And she helped me to understand emotions. So I would say that she's pretty memorable in the fact that she's had the deepest impact on me to understand emotions, because at the beginning of my journey I was really angry, and I thought I was anger itself and afraid to let it go. So she taught me a lot about this concept of the Buddha sort of approach about, emotions are just the stream of consciousness, and if you don't pick them up, they'll
Right.
just sort of pass you by. You acknowledge them and you see, I see anger in my presence, but I am not anger.
Mm,
So I would say that that's probably been one of the most deepful, impactful conversations that I've had. I think another one that sticks out in my mind is I had the opportunity to interview Professor Bruce Lipton early on in the show, and
mm,
having a conversation with him about we're shaped by our environment, not our genetics, and this concept of I'm sure you've heard the expression, like, you are the sum total of the 5 closest people in your life because of the energy frequency. And he really helped me to understand that it's really important to make sure that whom you allow close to your inner circle, because you never want anyone
mm,
inside your sphere, because
true.
they'll, like a bull in a china shop, they'll just mess it up. But those that you allow close to your life and that you listen and you respect, you've got to be very deliberate. And you should have no guilt or shame
Mm,
about, you're sort of a jerk, and I'm not mad at you, but it's like, and I see you clearly, but it's like, you can't be in my presence. That was
mm,
hard for me to understand too, because when you have to let someone go out of your life, there's a, like, the whole concept, I'm sure that you've had experiences too about,
yes.
um,
It's
oh,
difficult. It's
it
very
will
difficult.
there's that false sense of ego that'll come up to you and be like, "Well, who do you think you are? I mean, do you think you're better than that person?" That's a hard thing. I think especially
Exactly.
maybe 'cause I've been through the abuse, and when you become a doormat and a people pleaser, to put yourself first is not egoistic. Self-love is not egoistic. Now, if you're doing it to harm other people, then yes, it is. But to
Mm,
pull yourself out of the pit and to be the light, you've got to. I had an amazing conversation last week with someone on the show. She was like, and she's definitely a Christian, and it's in a good way, I believe. She was like, you got to
mhm,
seize the kingdom by force. You've got to like protect your spirit. Otherwise, people, as everyone knows, will start to tell you how to think, how to be, what to do. They'll dump all their crap on you. And when they're done with you, when you no
mm,
longer serve their purpose to help them build up their identity, they will discard you. And so, um, those two individuals and those conversations were probably the most influential over the past 5 years. Definitely.
wonderful. I actually resonate with the with what you said right now. When people want to use you, and out of we being so nice, and we want to change lives, and we want to give the best that we have, but if we are losing out on our own self-confidence, on our dignity and self-esteem, that very people are going to use us. And when, as you rightly said, when it is done with, when they're like, okay, we have reached the full brim of this glass, the water is full, it's just out, we don't need it, they'll just pick up like a mosquito out from that cup of water or tea and just throw it away. It's like treating us like a doormat. And I completely resonate because I've seen that happening in my circle. And at a certain point of time, even I have been one such person. And this entire realm of feeling like a victim, even I used to feel that way. And yes, it is a very painful process to be able to get out of that realm of thoughts and being. It's so painful, as if somebody has taken a knife and just stabbed you, but you actually have to go through that pain in order to be reborn, like
Yep.
rising like a phoenix. So I completely resonate with whatever you're saying right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just to say that it's like, I mean, I used to do that too. Everyone does it until you realize it. Because, when you've gone through abuse and you've gone through violence, there's that victim state of consciousness, and you're in a pit, and you will do everything to keep people in that pit as opposed to crawling out of the pit, stepping out of the pit and becoming that rising phoenix. So, you know, it's not like some people do it and some people don't. Everyone does it until they sort of have
Mm,
this conscious awakening that they're doing it and the reason why they're doing it. I was afraid to be myself. I was afraid to shine my light because of my experiences and the way that I was trained. And you will do, don't you understand? Don't you understand? You got to do this. I was trying to manipulate people in order to like love me, protect me, whatever, instead of just being self-sufficient, self-reliant, self-sovereign, and getting
mm,
out of the
mm.
pit, because you're in the pit, and everyone's in the pit, and so you've got to break free from that, and that's where I think freedom comes from, is when you're not controlling other people, and you're not controlled by other people, and you're living this sort of sovereign life. To me, that's happiness, and that's real freedom.
I totally agree with you. It's like being, like imagine we are like in the center of the circle, and around us we have all these different realms, whether it's work, family, relationship, friends, money, blah blah blah. And at times I used to look at my life whether I used to lean onto one of those pillars for support, but eventually what used to happen, either that pillar used to fall off, or
Yeah.
it used to throw me back. And as gradually, I became more self-aware. I became more alert about, rewiring my brain and becoming self-sufficient. Now, when I look at it, it's like unless and until we in the center of the circle are not self-sufficient and we are not confident, uh, we cannot sustain our life for long. Once we are in the center of the circle and we are strong and we are following the right righteousness path in the higher consciousness realm, all these other pillars will lean on us for support. And that is the time when all right, I have that strength. I am that one who is a master of my life, and I can support everybody. But if you're not confident, if we are not self-aware, if we do not understand what we need to do in order to get out of the pit, we'll keep falling and leaning on other people, other things to get
Yeah.
that happiness, to get that sense of security, to get that sense of certainty, which is which is scary.
Yeah. That's the one thing that I've learned, and that's where, the show is called Unshakable Self-Confidence, which I realize now is because you're not confident in yourself, you're confident in your divine identity
Mm,
because, I come from a Scottish, family that has Cherokee and Hopi, blood in it as well, and so there's that Native American concept of that's the underlying thing is being the center of a circle. Jesus was in the center
mm,
of the storm. Um, you know, temples, the God is in the center. You go through these elaborate temples, just sort of the world removes, your job, all these identities, all that stripped away as you go into the center of the temple where you meet divinity. And there's that concept of if
mm,
you stand in the center, anytime you go on the periphery, like you said, you build your identity around your job, you build your identity around your friends or your
mm,
relationship. Those are temporary and they can crumble and crack at any time. That's why you stay in the center because then you're unshakable because you're in the center. And that center is an understanding of, like what Jesus said, there's a oneness with you relate. The scripture that we use is 1 John 4:17. As God is, so am
mm,
I in this world. You are God in the garment of you having an experience. And if you can understand that beyond intellectual, beyond knowledge, and reside
mm.
in it, that's your center, and that's where your confidence comes from, and that's how you can go out in the world. That's when you shine bright. So yeah,
That's really beautifully explained, Billy, about being the center. Even in a temple, the God is in the center. Jesus was in the center of the storm. That's so. It's like visually when I see that, it's actually like the circle. In the center, you find your divine self. That is so beautiful. It's a beautiful example, isn't
yeah,
it? When you look at it visually, you bring yourself to the center. That's how you actually find yourself, your divine true self.
yeah. It's kind of like the Joseph
So,
Campbell, the hero's journey of going into the labyrinth and getting into the center, and that's the journey is to get to the center, and then reside in that center, stay in that center, and
mm,
then that's when all these experiences come and you can move around in the world, you can go do things in the world, but if you stay centered, then you don't wobble, you don't shake, you don't doubt, you don't question, you
mm,
don't succumb to fear, you don't succumb to being manipulated by other people, um, and you don't think yourself better, you don't think yourself less. It's just this totality of all things, and um, it's hard to put into words, and but everyone has to experience it for
mm.
themselves. But it's the sweet
True,
spot. It's
true.
the sweet spot. Yeah,
It's actually the sweet spot in the sense when you are centered, when you are connected to your true self. You feel this has happened to me as well. Many times in the recent past, you feel as if your life is floating and you're flying. It becomes so smooth because all of a sudden you start to feel that you're in sync with the higher source. Whether you call it universe, you call it God, or whatever anybody wants to denote that power as, and you feel as if it's really a mesmerizing feeling. It's difficult to explain, but when you are in connection with that source, your life is completely different. You look at it, your point of view. It's as if this is one of the famous examples that I keep using. It's like you're walking on the road, you have these tall towers and buildings around you, and when you look up, you see, oh my goodness, it's so tall. When you're on a flight on an aeroplane, and when you look down, you see the same towers, maybe the entire city like a minute dot. So if we relate to this to our problems, if we are not centered, if we are not connected to our higher self, we are in a state of greed, anger, foolishness, and many other such virtues. When we look up, we see all these huge problems in any aspect of our life. But when we are connected to our source, we are actually flying in that aeroplane. And when you look down, you have these issues. Yes, it's fine. The issues are there, but I will go through this. I will be able to go and jump over this hurdle. It's one of the things which it really visually connects to me when I think about it. If you're not connected to yourself, to your true self, you're like that normal human being on the ground looking up towards all these problems. And when you connect it to your higher self, you can manage everything.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because when I started this journey, I thought, and I think a lot of people too, the people that I coach and that I interact with, and I what I see out in the world is people want their problems to go away. They don't go away;
Mm,
they just shift from, like you were saying, which was a perfect sort of metaphor, symbology of are you on the ground looking up at the problems, or are you above the problems looking down? And it's a perspective; it's a shift. Even Jesus said, "There will be trials and tribulations, but cheer up, I have overcome the
mm,
world." And it's all about perspective. Um, because when you know that you are the divine extension, all things are beneath your feet, and there are no problems that you can't handle. You take that new look of like, oh, the problems are still there, but oh my gosh, they're so small, and why was I worried? So I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of the biggest things that I see people today is like they're striving for this self-realization, for this enlightenment to like comfort. It goes back to that avoiding pain and
mm.
avoiding they just want to be comfortable. And I hate to break it to you, but
Yeah, putting things under the carpet.
yeah, that's not what this is about, and that's not ever gonna happen. Um, so quit wasting your time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, when we speak about your book, Unshakable Self-Confidence, and when we elaborate on the point of what we speak to our own self and how we can rewire our brains, which you have also mentioned in the book, the roots that are caused when we speak anything to our own self. So I'm just trying to think this aloud. If we take care of our thoughts, do we actually are in a state of life that we can actually change the genetics and the upcoming generations after we are long gone? Only with this simple thing of rewiring our brain with the thoughts and hence our self-confidence attached to the same.
Um, you know, I don't know. Based on sort of if I put on my researcher, anthropologist hat, what we're talking about today is not new. It's not some discovery. I mean, this is like as we were saying before, this has been here since the mark of human time, echoing throughout the
Mm, mm,
timeline. And again, the concept of what Jesus was saying, there's always going to be poor people. I'm not sure that that's really
right.
the point. If we
Mm,
are God descending into man and forgetting that we're God and to go through this journey to remember that we're, to have that Christ nature, to have that resurrection so that we know that we cannot die. God's trying to prove itself. If the hero's journey is about um, coming in and being indoctrinated and forgetting and then having this moment that catalyst and go in the discovery and, the realization, I think, what I've discovered is that there's these patterns of time, a narrative that is continual. Um,
mhm.
and, there are sort of rules like gravity and all this stuff that the divine source has created. And I think the problem is we're trying to change the rules and instead of learning how to play the game, if that makes sense. And so we spend so
Yeah.
much time to change the world, trying to make it a utopia, and it's not supposed to be utopia. It's supposed to be a
Mm,
playground of self-discovery through trials and tribulations and resurrection and God knowing itself through experiences. Um, and I think that it goes back to be the change. It's you can only live your story, so live it. What does it matter if when you leave and 5 generations down from now, the world is gonna change. I mean, coming from a time when, I grew up, I was born in 1970, so I'm a child of the '70s when there was a
mhm.
phone, even before answering machines, and if someone tried to call you weren't home, they didn't get a hold of you. But look at us now. I mean, there's prompts
Right.
and everything like that. So the world itself will change and evolve, but I think the concept of coming in, forgetting who you are, and remembering who you are is eternal. It's an eternal
Mm,
story, and so I think that's the more perspective is just like quit worrying about the future. Quit worrying about um, is everyone going to be okay, and just do your job, do your part, play your role of being the hero and going through and changing yourself. Be the change because you can't. change anything. And if God is having a
Mm.
collective experience and evolving and growing, because it, even in terms of what we can see in terms of the universe, it's still expanding after untold billion trillions of years. It's the never ending story. It's the never ending journey. It's not for you to decide
Mm.
how it's going to be in the future. It's not for you to decide how it was in the past. Are you going to respond here, now, today, and play your part?
Wow, that's quite an insight. And I feel to keep it very simple is just to go on with the process, keep it simple, believe in yourself, rewire your own thoughts, whatever we are saying to ourselves, and live the moment now onwards. I guess that's the most simplest of formulas that we need to apply in our daily life
Yeah. I mean,
without complicating.
yeah, again, it goes back to that, Gandhi be the change. It's also like John Lennon. He talked about getting off the wheel, sort of that karmic wheel.
Right.
If you just keep going, and the cycle is what is going to happen, 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 what is I got to change, what's going to happen. No, get off the wheel
Mm.
and just be. Um, my uncle who was Hopi, there's the expression. It's like wisdom comes when you stop seeking it and just live the life the Creator intended for you. That's your job.
So beautiful.
That's
Wow,
you
that's
even
so
yeah, you see
beautifully
that
said.
in sort of like Hindu, right? The I was gonna say the Indira, that's not I can't pronounce it right, but the concept, you know, the Indra, I'm sorry, the Indra,
Yes.
there's just repeating patterns, and if you think yourself too highly and you're gonna change and control and rule the world, but, you know, the god, I can't remember his name at the moment, but he shows the trail of ants and, like, they were all once Indras too. It's
Mm.
it's not getting on the throne and trying to control the world, but get on the real throne, which
True.
is your sovereign nature. And that's the problem. Everyone's trying to fix the world, everyone's trying to run the world, and that's the problem.
Mm.
Instead of just being themselves and be not of this world, but be conformed by the or be not trans sorry, be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the entire renewal of the mind. That's the Apostle Paul. That's the stuff. It's right there. Turn your back on the
Right.
world and turn your face towards God, realign, and that's all you have to do. That's all you can do.
Wow.
Um, Everything else is struggle, futile, and I believe egoistic. Sorry.
Wonderful, Bri. Wonderful. The way you have shared the last few sentences is just very enlightening. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that brings us to the end of our wonderful interview. And the viewers, we were speaking with Billy Atwell, who is an amazing, amazing human being. And he's written his first book called Unshakable Self-Confidence. You have to get a hold of his book because in such a simplistic manner, he can actually transform your life. And if you want to get in touch with Billy, you can actually log on to www.unshakableselfconfidence.com /magazine, and you can also get more information on the same website. Billy, if you want to share a few words about rising like a phoenix on the website, you can please go ahead and share a few words with the audience as well.
Yeah, so beyond the book, which is cool. I mean, we talk about the book on the show and stuff. So, subscribe to the podcast. But the magazine link that you're providing is for Rising Phoenix, which is a free monthly digital magazine, which has articles by me, about fear, my research. But we have articles from guests from the show. It's just a really great magazine that we've created for our tribe of phoenixes to help them, get to the root of their self-doubt, overcome their painful past, and transform. So it's free. We don't sell any products. Although we are going to be launching t-shirts, but we don't really do courses or anything like that. We just provide the information, and we try to do it as free as possible, like a free magazine. So it's totally free. So subscribe today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Billy. I'm going to get my hands on that beautiful T-shirt if it's the same one that you're wearing because I love phoenixes.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
a visible reminder that you can actually come out of that pit and live a life of fulfillment and happiness. So thank you so much, Billy. Thank you for joining us on our channel. You are invincible. It has been an absolute delight to have you on a show, and the viewers. I hope you have gathered a lot of information, and please log on to the website of Page to get more info, and you can definitely get in touch with him. And namaste from India, Billy. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It was absolutely incredible. I enjoyed it so much. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So, viewers, we'll see you soon with many more interviews, and we'll also have Billy yet again on a number of shows with us as well, as he's been kind enough to be with us on this one. So, you take good care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon. Namaste. Thank you, Billy. Namaste from India.